framework of how one even goes about thinking what kind of vehicle I should buy and what categories to consider.
It's a great starting point, but it's a huge topic right there.
A little bit broad, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit broad.
NEMT Experts, I've got again with me Jim Cermak, the Director of Training and Customer Experience at Driverge. Jim, how you doing?
Oh, fantastic. And Nirav, thank you so much for having me back. I had a great time the first time. I got a lot of great feedback from our discussion last time on training, and really excited to talk today.
Right back at you. Today, we are talking about what kind of vehicles to buy. And there's a lot of different categories. New versus used, rear entry versus side entry, what type of vehicle, like size. Jim, I get this question a lot about, hey, I'm starting my NEMT business or I'm growing my NEMT fleet. I want to do wheelchair. I want to do stretcher. Should I think about having a vehicle that holds multiple passengers at the same time? Just can you give us a lay of the land of the framework of how one even goes about thinking what kind of vehicle I should buy and what categories to consider?
Yeah, wow. It's a great starting point, but it's a huge topic right there.
A little bit broad, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit broad. So if you're a brand new, you're just getting into the industry, and typically someone getting into the industry has some history of this, or else they wouldn't want to get into it, or they wouldn't know that this exists as a potential business opportunity. So maybe they worked for an NEMT company. They were a driver. They're like, wow, I think there's huge opportunities to start my own company. That's where I get a lot of startups will come to me, and that's typically their story. But we also have other people that they had a family member that was in a wheelchair, and they saw that that person a lot of times had to wait for an hour or 2 hours for their ride because the company just wasn't very reliable, or they weren't being treated very nicely by the drivers. Whatever the situation, they said, I want to get into this. And so there's a jump off point of sometimes they have no real knowledge of vehicles and what types, other than maybe what they've seen. Others have an intimate knowledge of the type of vehicle because they drove a certain type of van, or maybe they were part of a company and they had all sorts of different types. All that being said, there's a lot to consider when you're jumping off. The first is, what kind of service do you want to provide? And that is, do I want to do very, very personal door-to-door service where I'm picking up one person at a time? I'm taking them to their appointment. That's all I want to focus on. And I want to have that very personal, intimate relationship with my passengers. I want to provide that very personal service. So for them, maybe a minivan that holds a single wheelchair, or maybe one that holds up to 2 wheelchairs might be a good option, but that will minimize the number of passengers you're going to be having. But that depends on, again, what kind of business you want to have. Now, if your thoughts are, I want to go after contracts, I want to try to land a contract with a local hospital or a nursing home or a senior living facility where I might be taking multiple people in wheelchairs, or a combination of wheelchairs and ambulatory passengers all at one time, then a minivan might not be your best option. And then maybe you're going up to a full-size van where you can fit up to possibly 4 wheelchairs, or a combination of 2 wheelchairs and 4 walk-on passengers. There's a lot to consider. How are you going to establish your business?
Some people starting their NEMT business, they think, hey, you know what? I want the flexibility of being able to take on more passengers in the vehicle at once. I may not need it now because I don't have the trip volume. I'm just starting. But what if I need that ability to handle different configurations and more passengers in the future? Is it just, how does someone go about assessing those kinds of needs?
I guess it's really, I would do a lot of research. I'd do a lot of research. I'd talk to people in the industry. I'd call up some of these companies, and ask them and say, hey, can I ask you about your business? How did you get started in the business? How did you grow it? What is your mix like? And maybe it would be calling someone that you're not going to be a direct competitor to, because they might not be so willing to share good information, or reach out to a vehicle, someone that sells these vehicles, like our company, or there's other manufacturers, or there's other vendors that sell commercial wheelchair vans, and then say, okay, what are my options here? What kind of businesses are there for, if I'm just taking people to and from dialysis, what kind of vehicle do I need? And what kind of growth potential is there? So talk to someone who's going to be able to give you honest answers, good answers, and knowledgeable answers as to what your options are, because you make a great point. I might think today I want a minivan, but now all of a sudden I have an opportunity to take a family that they have two people in wheelchairs. Now what do? I only have a one wheelchair. Now I have to invest in a whole separate van, and there's a whole set of costs that I wasn't planning on. And not only that, but I have to have another driver if I have two different vans. So there's a lot to be considered there. And how do you want to at least start your business and then think about your growth opportunities? So in that case, if you're looking to grow and you're looking to say, hey, I want to possibly take multiple wheelchairs or look for new opportunities, having that larger van, a full-size van that could hold multiple wheelchairs, is definitely going to be a better option for you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about a concrete sort of decision. There's rear entry for wheelchairs. There's side entry. And I know that you have thoughts about how people should think about that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're talking about a minivan, for me, this decision's very simple. And that's for an NEMT company. I think a rear access van where that ramp comes out the back is far and away the best option for NEMT companies, for a couple of reasons. One, for the driver, it's easy in and easy out, because you have to think about it this way. Your passenger has to be facing forward when you get them into the vehicle. They can't be facing sideways. So that, for those companies that run the side access vans, that ramp that comes out that sliding side door, you got to get your person in, and then you have to turn them so they're facing forward. And if they're in a larger chair, they're in a scooter, they have their legs out because their legs need to be elevated, it may be very difficult trying to get positioned correctly. And then you have to do the same thing when you get to the destination. You got to get them turned again to get them off. So from a driver's standpoint and from a customer or a passenger comfort level, it's going to be so much easier going in and then coming out. Now,
is it a black and white issue, Jim? Like, are there any advantages to having a side entry, or is it just, hey, rear entry is the way to go?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely advantages for side entry. Now, and those advantages are that your passengers will always be much closer to the driver. So depending on the rear entry vehicle that you get, that passenger might be sitting all the way in the back and far from the driver. So communication is going to be hampered a bit because of the distance. That person might also feel like, oh, I'm sitting all the way back here. I feel more like a piece of luggage than I do an actual passenger. Hopefully the driver will be able to get past that and give them the love that they need, so they feel special and feel loved. But there is a fact that there will be a distance between the driver and the passenger who's sitting all the way in the back position. So that side entry, you will always have your passenger either right behind the driver, or there's going to be some vans that might have taken out the front passenger seat, where that passenger can be located right in that front passenger position next to the driver. That's more rare in a commercial setting. It's more a consumer thing for personal use, but that does happen as well. So that is the main advantage of wanting to have a side entry van.
And if you could share maybe some data that you've collected from just having seen so many NEMT businesses, what do you see people buying more of, the rear entry or the side entry?
Definitely rear for commercial use. For NEMT use, definitely a rear. If we're talking a minivan, we're talking rear is more prevalent. Side is I what the exact is, I would say probably 90%, 10%. 90% rear, 10% side. In what I see.
A lot of percent for rear entry.
It is. And again, it's for an operator standpoint, it's a much more efficient way to load and offload your passengers, because you're just going straight in, locking them in position. You don't have to do any jockeying around. There's going to be more room for putting on the securement devices. It's just a much more efficient and effective way. So you can pick up your passengers a little quicker, on average, a little quicker than you can with the side. So I think it's there's less to think about, and there's more options of I can fit scooters, and if the person wants to stay on their scooter, they can do that without having to get off. I can fit larger wheelchairs because I don't have to turn them. They're going straight in and coming straight out. So I think that is the main reason why. And I also, on average, the rear access minivans are less expensive because it's an easier build from a manufacturing standpoint.
So speaking of expensive, let's talk about new versus used.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Obviously, dollars count. Money matters. Profits matter. That's why businesses exist. They exist to be able to sustain and make money for the owners and for everybody. So we have to be concerned about that. New wheelchair vans are expensive. There's no way around that. It's just they are expensive. And so used, for a lot of companies, they might look at that and go, we need to go used because we don't have 70 to 100,000, 120,000 to buy a brand new van, depending on which one you're buying and what the upfit looks like and seating configurations and all that. When you're thinking new versus used might look very, very appealing, very attractive, because you could save a lot of money. And for a lot of startups, they go this route. This is what I find. And a lot of times a startup, and this is what I find, this is not across the board, but you will have people that will find a van, and it's a used wheelchair van, and it was used as a commercial wheelchair van. And they go out and find it. It might be on Facebook Marketplace. They may have found a sign somewhere. They saw a classified ad, and they bought a van for $10,000. And they're thinking, this is great. This is going to get me up and running. And the van is beat up. So the van looks not very good. And it might be operating, but it needs some work. And so you might need to invest more. And still, with all the investments, it might be far less expensive than a brand new van. However, you also have to consider, beyond the dollars, what are your passengers going to feel better riding in? Are they going to feel better riding in a van that's maybe 15 years old and pretty much looks like it's 15 years old on the inside? It's pretty beat up. It's, it can use some TLC, or something that is brand new. And where are you going to get more referrals from? And if you go after some business, you try to get a contract with someone, having a new van is going to give you a leg up over an older van. Now, I'm not saying an older van is completely out of the question, but you have to consider these things when making that purchase.
Well, one consideration, like you mentioned, is a van that's 15 years old, looks like it's 15 years old, and people may not feel comfortable, right? So it's like the aesthetics and appearance. But are there other aspects of having an older van that are not as good in a very evident way? Like, hey, maybe the van is not as safe, or maybe it requires more maintenance costs, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. As with any vehicle, the older it gets, you're going to be putting more money into it because things break down, rust happens. You've got a lot of things that you need to consider, not just from the vehicle itself, but also your equipment. I've seen people that have purchased an older van, and the you have to also consider the lift is also the same age. And so that lift has been used a lot, and some of these lifts start to corrode, they start to rust. And over time, it might operate okay today, but within a year, you might need to be replacing that entire lift. And depending on the vehicle, so that might be $5,000 right there of replacing your lift with a new lift. But then when they pull that old lift out, now your 15-year-old van has some rust underneath it. It might not be safe to put a new lift in there. So there's a lot that needs to be considered. So don't just be enamored by a price tag. But if maybe it's a 3-year-old Ford Transit that's low miles and it looks like it's new, if you can come across one of those, fantastic. Maybe it just came off a lease, maybe it's someone went out of business or they're downsizing their business, and you have an opportunity to jump on something like that, then yes, that could be a really, really nice option for a company.
Let's jump into the electric versus gas vehicles. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Obviously, electric is the future, right? I mean, we've seen a huge growth in the number of vehicles that are out there. Ford has their e-Transit out there. I know Ram is working on an electric ProMaster. I'm sure the Sprinters are not too far behind if they haven't already put one out. So these vehicles are out there. They're available. However, we have not seen a huge interest level yet. And the main reason for that is range. So you've got companies and NEMT companies, their vehicles are on the road nonstop. And the commercial vehicles they haven't had the range yet. Obviously, they're working on it. These cars are getting, especially the consumer cars, the passenger cars and SUVs, the range is extending, but that hasn't gone over to the commercial vehicles yet. So some of the current full-size vans that are electric have not had the range that companies need yet. You don't want
the battery won't last a full day for an NEMT vehicle.
Right. Yeah. Some of these, from the factory, they might say the range is 150 miles, which isn't a lot of miles to begin with. But then you're running a lift, which uses the battery. You're running the AC. You're running the power doors, all this stuff, and that will drain the battery quicker. So all of a sudden now your 150 miles you might be down close to 100 miles, and to recharge that is not quick. It's not a 5-minute stop in the gas station and refill. That might be, I need an hour or more just to get the range back up a bit. Gotcha. And so can you afford to pull your van out of service for an hour in the middle of the day?
So what I'm taking away, Jim, is as of now, electric vehicles are not something that NEMT business owners should be thinking about just yet. It's not a viable option. The vehicle battery is just too low, can't last all day, not worth any risk. We just got to wait until the range increases. That's it.
I would say for most. I don't want to say across the board. There may be NEMTs that have a contract where they're going short distances, where they're going point A to point B, and they've got that contract, and maybe an electric vehicle might work for them. But for most NEMT companies, I would say the jury's still out. We need to wait a while before the range improves. Yeah.
Are there any final thoughts that you have that NEMT business owners should think about, or categories to consider when going about buying vehicles?
Yeah, I would say, figure out how many wheelchairs to help you figure out the size vehicle, the type of vehicle that that's going to work best for your company, especially if you're just getting started or you're looking to expand from one vehicle to 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 and beyond. Figure out what makes the most sense from a size and capability standpoint. And then also, if you're just getting started, check with the state to see when I bring my vehicle in to get an audit, to become an official audited state represented licensed NEMT company, if I'm taking Medicare or Medicaid money, that a lot of the states have certain requirements. What does my vehicle need to have? What to pass? And so when you're going to make that purchase, especially if you find a used van, make sure that you're not buying something that is not going to work for you. And do your research. The insurance on these is very expensive. A lot of brand new operators get sticker shock as to, wow, I did not realize the insurance was going to be so much. But that's a huge part of it as well. And also, when you're going to look, whether you're buying new or used, check on who the manufacturer is and make sure that the manufacturer you're buying from is reputable and has done all the appropriate testing. I know from our standpoint, when we engineer these things, they have to go through rigorous testing, crash testing, and seat pull testing, all sorts of testing, carb testing for exhaust and emissions. So we have the results of all those. We could share the records. So if you're wondering, does this, don't just let someone say, oh yeah, it passes everything. Ask for the results. Ask, hey, can I see your test results? Can I see all the certifications to make sure that I'm comfortable with this? Because you want to be protected. This is your livelihood and you're taking passengers who are very vulnerable. You want to make sure you're buying the best vehicle possible. So ask for those test results, ask for those certifications. And if the company has them, they'll have no problem sharing those with you. But we know that these vehicles can be and have been modified by small mom and pops, maybe in a garage, and they might be a wonderful upfit, but if it gets into an accident, it could be a little dicey. So we just want to make sure that everyone is making good, solid decisions, that you're not putting yourself or your passengers at risk just based on you trying to save a few bucks, because that's not going to save you in the long run.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much. I'm going to be putting Jim's contact info and the contact info for Driverge in the description of this video. Jim, thank you again.
Run, Bambi, run. Let's go.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.